Did you know that learning a new language is hard? Hey, Weeb Sauce here. No, but really, learning a new language can be extremely difficult. But I'm here to tell you that if you are a manga reader and a manga collector, the process is a lot easier and a whole lot more fun. For example, you get a ton of benefits, such as having an excuse to buy more manga, which is probably the best on this list. It also gives you access to licenses that are not out in English. But most of all, it really accelerates your learning because it keeps you engaged, which is one of the very difficult things with learning a new language. Sometimes you get burned out, you lose interest, but it also provides visual context, which helps a lot in learning things fast. And it really helps out your mind build the skill of learning. So we're going to go over several things. I will try to keep it brief, but as comprehensive as possible, which I don't even know if that makes sense. I'm going to go over the methods that I use in learning several languages, such as Spanish, Italian, French, and Japanese. Then I'm going to be going over resources, stuff that you can use to help you with your learning. And then at the end, I'm going to do a little walkthrough where I show you step by step how I read a manga in a foreign language and what I do to learn as I read. I just want to clarify that I am not a language expert, nor do I pose to be. I just really want to show you guys my perspective, my experiences, what I have found to be very useful and successful, as I have been getting a lot of comments and questions regarding language learning, as I have been collecting manga in several languages. Anyways, there are chapters in the description if you wish to skip around and stuff, so feel free to do that. Anyways, let's get started on the video. Okay, so let's talk about methods. Now, before we get into methods, I do want to lay out some groundwork for you guys. Two very important tools that are going to help you out no matter what language you decide to end up learning. Now, one of them is called Anki, which is a flashcard program that allows you to create your own custom flashcards. It's available for both iPhone and Android. This is going to help you to memorize and retain certain vocabulary as well as phrases, among other things, and to help you better categorize certain sets of vocabulary and stuff like that, which I'll get into when we go through methods. And the next one is a foundational language learning program, whether it's Duolingo or Babbel or whatever you decide to use. I personally have found a lot of success with Duolingo. It has helped me with my learning, and there are certain methods that you can use with Duolingo, which I have found to be very useful. I'm not sponsored by Duolingo. This is just something that I have good experience with. But I think any language learning app or book even should do fine, just as long as you're learning the basics, learning the grammar, stuff like that. First off, let's say you are at the intermediate level. Maybe you're in a situation like me where you grew up speaking a second language at home due to your heritage. So in my situation, I was able to speak household Spanish and understand it, but I wouldn't say I was fully fluent in it, and I even had trouble speaking it a lot of the times. If you are intermediate, I would suggest to just go straight in and get whatever manga you want. Just make sure it's something interesting, something that you're going to enjoy reading, that even if you have trouble reading, you're still going to want to keep on engaging with it. Then later, as you kind of get accustomed to learning, you can branch out to specific categories to learn specific vocab with like political and fantasy, all that good stuff. But the main thing is just getting whatever you want and just diving right into it. You're gonna probably have a lot of trouble when you first start reading with certain words and terms, but don't worry, especially if you're sticking to one series, you're going to find that at the beginning it might be a little bit difficult, but as you continue on with different volumes, the words that you had trouble with are repeated and you know them already, stuff like that. You're likely going to be very slow at reading, but trust me, you will be surprised how quick you are to get to the level of even speed reading a lot of the times. So don't be discouraged when you're first getting into it. Sometimes it can be a little bit daunting when you think you know a language, then you tackle something that's complex and it's very discouraging. But yeah, make sure to use the Anki app. Just write down whatever you don't know. If you know most of the grammar as well, I don't think a language learning app is absolutely necessary. I didn't need it. I was able to just use Manga as well as other media like Spanish Manga Tube video content to help me learn vocab, learn different phrases, be able to understand it better, all that good stuff, which we're going to get into a little bit more later. But generally, I say don't worry about it too much unless you really want to go deep and get super advanced with it. Then get some books or something that takes it to the next level. But honestly, with manga, that's pretty much what you're going to need. As long as you know the grammar and you know all the different usages, all the particles, all that stuff, you should be fine. All right, so let's get into the method if you're an absolute beginner. what you're going to want to do is learn the foundation. If it has a new set of alphabet, you're going to want to familiarize and memorize the alphabet as best as possible. But most of all, learning the foundation, learning the grammars, you're going to want to use some type of language learning program, whether it's an app, whether you're learning it at school, or whether you're learning it through a book of some sort or some online program. That's what you're going to want to do first. Now, something that's going to help you out a lot is looking up the most common words and phrases of that particular language. This is going to help you be able to read manga physically a whole lot sooner. So once you feel like you have a pretty good foundation, now you can start introducing manga physically. So what you want to do is you want to stick to series that don't have complex writing in it, that aren't too technical. So you can go with children's manga, but I think you're going to be bored very easily. Maybe get, 1 or 2 volumes like that, but try to get something that is slice of life, something that doesn't have very complex dialogue, and try to stay away from seinen. Shonen can be very complex at times too, so be very careful with the type of shonen that you pick. But stuff like romances, comedies, those can tend to be very easy. Take for example Yokohama Kaidashi Kiko. It's a very famous slice of life. I got this in French. This was my very first French volume when I was first learning French. This was the perfect one. The dialogue is very, very simple. Because it's slice of life, a lot of the phrases, words that it uses is stuff that you learn in the beginning stages of a certain language, with pretty much no matter what program that you're using. Words for fruits, shopping, all that good stuff. All of that is in this. So this was extremely, extremely helpful. Plus it was really, really good. So I was always excited to read it even a little bit before going to bed, which is really, really crucial in learning. And another choice that you can make is something that you have already read or either watched, even if it's a little bit beyond your level. Take for instance, Ranking of Kings. It's definitely a lot more technical than Yokohama Kaidashi Kiko. There's more dialogue, there's fantasy words and political terms that are used in this. But because I have seen the anime, the process is not as daunting and discouraging, because if I'm ever in a scenario or part of the manga that I feel like I may not know what's going on, I've already read it or I've already seen it, and I'm not really losing out on much. And a lot of the times it'll help me to learn certain words. Maybe there's a scene where there's 2 people clashing and one of them says something. He uses a word that I'm not completely familiar with. Well, I already know this scene and I already know what's going on. He's calling him a traitor. That's the word for traitor. Situations like that. It's very, very useful with that. So once you become more familiar with the language, you can branch out to other stuff. You can really, challenge yourself with particular series, even if it may be above your level, but try not to go too crazy. You don't want to overwhelm yourself with something that's too difficult and, run off and buy a ton of volumes and stuff. Once you have the volume in your hands, you want to be able to get used to taking notes and jotting down the specific vocabulary words that you don't know. It's going to be very tedious at first, but trust me, it's worth it. And a lot of the times, the words that you don't know often gets reused within the series. So you're going to find yourself writing down less and less words as you go on with a particular series. Test yourself with visual context. If you don't know a word in a particular sentence, try to figure out what that word might be and see if you got it right. A lot of the times you'll be surprised how often you're going to get it right. But doing this and testing yourself often like that is teaching your brain how to learn through visual context. And eventually you're going to get to a level where oftentimes you don't even have to double check a certain word. You see that word, you continue it, you see it again, you realize, in both these situations it applies. You get a general understanding and you can honestly go on reading a volume without having to look it up. Of course, you should always look it up in the end, but it's extremely useful in learning as fast as possible. One thing I recommend is going on Twitter and following publishers for that specific language. So say you're learning French, go follow French manga publishers. With Twitter and even on Instagram, there's a translate feature, which is extremely helpful. And this is great because it keeps you up to date with certain manga releases while also helping you learn stuff. So you can look at a tweet, see if you can translate it before hitting the translate button, then hitting translate, seeing what you got right and seeing what you got wrong. This has helped me out a lot. It's awesome. You learn new stuff and it's a great way to stay up to date. So you can go on Twitter, go on Instagram, get familiar with the manga content creative space for that specific language. Go on YouTube and search up manga tubers from that language and start following them. Use captions if you feel like you can't really understand them that well. Pause it if you need to. It's honestly perfect because if you're ever feeling burned out on reading manga specifically, you can still be within that world by watching manga content, which is something that you're likely going to be very, very interested in. So once you have all these things together, you're going to realize and see how the system kind of feeds into itself. Anyways, that's kind of a general idea idea. I think there are certainly different approaches that you can take with specific languages. That's the general approach that you're going to want to take if you're completely new to a certain language. Okay, so let's talk about Duolingo a little bit. I'm going to go into this because it's something that I personally use and I've had a lot of success with. One thing that you're likely going to want to do is use what is called the hover method. So Duolingo has units, and within those units, there are lessons, and each lesson has 5 levels. And what people tend to do is maxing out each lesson, then going to the next one, maxing it out at 5, then going to the next one, maxing it out at 5. And the problem with this is that it's very difficult to remember and retain something that you already maxed out, 6 lessons ago. Even though you did max it out, it's very easy to forget. So what people do is they use the hover method, which is essentially not maxing out the levels right away. Say you're at lesson 1, get it to level 1, then go to the next one, level that one up to level 1, then go to the one after that, level that one up to 1, then go back to the first lesson and leveling that up to level 2. Then go to the next one, level that up to. You end up partitioning what you learn, and this is an extremely effective way of retaining what you learn. So now I'm going to touch upon a specific hack that I do that is very situational, but I'm going to share this situation with you because I know there's a lot of Spanish speakers in particular out there that are looking to branch out to other Latin-based languages. If you know Spanish already and you want to say learn Italian or French or Portuguese, so what you can do is instead of going level by level for a particular lesson, so what you can do in Duolingo, you can go to the final level by taking a test. But in that test, if you don't get more than 3 answers wrong, then you essentially max out that lesson. It takes you to level 5. So because a lot of the vocabulary and grammar structures are very similar within the same language family of Latin-based languages, what you can do is do that. Take the final test for a specific language and you're going to be very surprised that, I got none of them wrong. And you can do that for each lesson and max out each lesson. Then applying the hover method by going back and going into what is called mastering in Duolingo. So say you already maxed out a level, it starts to test you with difficult questions to where then you'll be able to master that specific little bubble. So that's essentially what I did. And I basically finished unit 1 within like a week. And then within a couple of weeks of doing that, I was able to read my first volume of French and understand 80% of it, which is kind of crazy because even though, they share a lot of similar vocab, there's a lot of stuff that's completely different, and French is extremely hard to learn. But this really helped me, and it would have been a lot slower if I was doing it level by level for each lesson. Going to level 1, then going to level 2, because it can get repetitive. So that's my little situational tip. I recommend not doing this the entire way. Obviously, if you ever get to a specific lesson that you feel like you don't really know well, then do it normally, go level by level on that. But try not to waste your time. If you feel like it's getting repetitive, take the final test on the particular lesson and see if you can finish it. Okay, so where do you buy the manga? I'm only going to really go in depth to specific languages that I have personally bought for. Okay, so for Spanish, you have a couple of options, but your main one, if you're starting off, is going to be Book Depository. I actually have a video that kind of goes into this. It's also a good recommendation video as well if you're looking for Spanish manga recommendations. So check that out if you want more details, but Book Depository is great. The shipping is free and the selection is extremely well. Casa del Libro is something that you should only really be using if you're going to be buying in bulk. Otherwise, the shipping can be a little bit expensive. I would try to stay away from Amazon Spain. The shipping can be extremely expensive as well. The selection isn't as strong as Book Depository, in my opinion. Sometimes on eBay, there are sellers that sell manga from Mexico, so that's also an option. So for French in particular, you have a couple of options as well. But once again, if you're starting off, you're only going to want to stick to lyreka.com. It's a great website. It's a blessing of a website because it offers free shipping even if you order 1 volume, which is probably what you're likely going to be doing in the beginning. If you're going to be ordering from bulk, you can check out BD Fugue, which offers a wider selection of manga there. But like I said, you're really only going to be ordering from there if you buy in bulk, because you're going to be overpaying for shipping if you get like less than 6 volumes or so. So for Italian, I haven't really found any sources. Amazon Italy is extremely good. They have a wide selection, but the only downside is you do have to buy in bulk. You have to order around 7 volumes or so in order to start not overpaying on shipping. Book Depository does have some Italian manga, but not a whole lot, but it is an option there. Now for Japanese is a pretty complex one. There's several ways you can order Japanese manga. A really useful one is Kinokuniya, which offers retail Japanese manga. You can get it online. There are also brick and mortar stores, so definitely look up to see if there's one in your area. That's a really good option. I have bought Japanese manga sets from eBay. The only thing is that usually they only sell sets. You can't really buy individual volumes, but it's a really good option and it's very easy to find series. There's a ton of sellers on there selling Japanese sets. If you're looking for used and out of print stuff, there's a website called buy.jp, which allows you to participate in Japan only auctions. And then there's mangarepublic.com, which is extremely good if you're looking to buy used Japanese manga. I definitely recommend checking out Professor Otaku's video on this. He does have a comprehensive video. Definitely check that out if you're going to be buying Japanese manga. If you personally know a website for a particular language that you can share with us, definitely let me know in the comments. That way I can add it to the description. So some useful websites are websites like Alibris and Abe Books. Sometimes they will have used manga in foreign languages. It's really hit or miss though, but it's something definitely worth checking out. So as far as scans go, there are websites available for particular languages. I do know for French and Spanish. I don't feel comfortable putting on this video, so hopefully somebody in the comments will help you. But if not, DM me on Instagram or on Twitter or something, or on the server, and I'll see if I can help you from there. So another great tool, of course, is using anime, and there are some great tools for that to help supplement your learning with a particular language. There are actually programs that you can use in conjunction with watching anime to help your learning, which is extremely awesome. Obviously, try to be smart with it. Watch stuff that you're also reading. It's going to be extremely helpful, and try to stick to simple stuff if you're starting out, but it's a great option and definitely goes hand in hand with manga. Let's walk through a couple of different languages here and kind of what is my approach when I'm going into a manga in a foreign language. So in this instance, Ranking of Kings is a manga that I already know pretty well. Even though it's a little bit above my level, it's still pretty approachable. So I'm kind of flipping through it, and one thing you're gonna notice, especially when you're first starting off, is that a lot of these little explanation bubbles can get very wordy. So if you ever find yourself overwhelmed by them, try to either skip it and maybe come back to it later, and then try going to parts where there's dialogue here. Okay, so this scene here is I know it fairly well. Complètement bouche et incapable de parler. Right here, I know that parler, speak. It's one of the very first words that you learn, and incapable is very similar to incapable. So that plus the context of the scene, I know these people are talking about Boji, who is incapable of speaking. So that's very straightforward. And il est sourd, that word is probably going to be something brand new. You very rarely come across it in certain manga, but the word is very similar to sordo, which is the word for being deaf in Spanish. And even though that's the first time hearing it, through context and through, previous knowledge to existing languages that I know, I'm able to figure out a general translation for it. And of course, you can continue reading like this, or you can stop and translate to see what you do know, to double check whether your context reading was correct. So moving along here, let's read this next bubble here. En plus, il est trop chétif pour manier correctement une épée de infant. Okay, so once again, through the context, I already know in the story, Boji is not very strong and he cannot even operate like a practice sword. But even if I didn't know that, infant here is very similar to infant. So we know he's basically talking about a children, something of children. And épée right here, I have never read that word in French before, but it's very similar to Spanish. And I know it's likely talking about a sword because in Spanish, the word for sword is espada. It's somewhat similar, but given the context, I can see here a sword, and it's a children's sword because I know that the context of the story, I'm able to translate these new words. So here's a good example of something that, I may not have the correct translation of, but I can still generally understand the message that is being conveyed here. C'est le prince de nul. We know here he's being negative. I don't know what nulls means, but I can probably guess it means he's saying he is the prince of idiots, morons, or something to that nature. Do I have to double check this? No, I get a general feeling for the message and I can continue reading. And then at the end, if I want to, I can look it up, or I can just look it up right away. So that's a general approach for a language that, I'm somewhat new to, but has a lot of words that kind of cross over to a language that I already know. So what about Spanish? You're intermediate in it, you kind of already know. It's just pretty straightforward. You're gonna run into vocabulary that you may not either remember or can't really decipher that well. En un rincón perdido de una radiante ciudad de neón, bajo las penumbras de un edificio que normalmente hubiera ignorado. So right here, I honestly don't know what penumbra is. I don't know what it is. You know, it's with the context, you don't really have to know it, right? But you write it down and you can see if you can guess what it means. It's describing the scenery and it's describing it in a classic way, you know, like beneath the city lights. So you know it's probably referring to either beneath the signs, or it's either like the signs or the roofs or something like that to that nature. But all in all, you just know that they're describing the scene. They're describing the surrounding setting. So you can keep going from there and keep doing that. If there's ever a situation where you feel like you do not understand at all, even with context, that's when you for sure want to, you know, bust out the dictionary, bust out Google Translate, and essentially go from there. So this is something in Japanese. I haven't practiced too much Japanese, specifically with using manga and physical, but one very important feature that you want to have in your manga is what is pictured here, where the kanji is essentially translated on the side there. So if you're learning Japanese, kanji is essentially those little symbols there that represent a variety of words. It's kind of like a little shortcut without having to write it letter by letter. It's essentially a little mini picture. But the problem is, especially with Japanese, it can be very difficult learning all the different kanji. But some manga here, and this is interesting because normally you see it with shonen and stuff for kids, but you know, in this specific edition, despite it being seinen, it has the hiragana on the side there, which is very, very nice. And I don't know if there's any sources out there that let you know what manga have that feature. But obviously, if you're buying it in physical, it's something that you want to look through before you go ahead and, you know, go to the cash register or whatever. But yeah, I mean, if you're starting off, obviously would not recommend Innocent. It's extremely political and can get very, you know, complex at times. But if you absolutely love the series, and in this instance, you know, there's a lot of pages where it's just nothing but art, it can be an enjoyable experience, even though it is above your level. Just taking it slow, bubble by bubble, it is totally fine. You know, for me personally, the thing that's important is enjoying the experience and having fun, and you know, having the joy of experiencing something new, having it in your hands, even though you may not fully understand it, and even maybe if it's tedious, it's just a lot of fun. And you're gonna run into stuff that, you know, is not too complex and you can read, and it could be simple as like, oh, konnichiwa or something, you know, and it's exciting and it's very encouraging. So those are pretty much just general approaches that I take for specific languages. As I've been saying, definitely take it slow, don't get discouraged, and take your time and just have fun with it. So that is pretty much it, guys. That's the video. I really hope this video encourages you to go out there and learn a new language. It's such an amazing feeling to be able to learn a new language, and you're going to be surprised how it really opens you up to a whole new world that just you did not have access to, and you're going to see what an amazing feeling that is. If you're barely starting off, don't get discouraged. It's hard in the beginning, but trust me, once you get past those beginning phases, it gets a lot easier, and you're soon going to get to a point where your brain is very good at learning languages, and it's easier to start to learn new languages if that's something you decide to do. But yeah, don't get discouraged and don't be afraid to dive right in. You know, like I've been saying, the fact that you're likely a manga collector and a manga reader makes it so intoxicating and makes it very engaging. You're going to see exactly how fun it is, and it's just an all in all very positive and awesome experience. You know, who doesn't like learning, and especially learning a new language? Yeah, definitely bookmark this video, put it in your favorites or something, come back to it, scroll through the chapters. I may or may not do a comprehensive video for a specific language. If you guys want to see that, I can do that because I can go really deep into particular languages. But all in all, this is a general overlook of everything. I think this is going to really set the foundation for you in starting your journey for a particular language. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, definitely leave a like and definitely subscribe if you haven't already. My channel has really become a multi-language manga channel, so you're going to be seeing me pick up a lot of manga from different languages, which I'm sure you would enjoy. If you have any questions, definitely leave them in the comment section. I will do my best to answer them to the best of my ability. But other than that, thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.